In this video we will talk about the session-based auth. In session-based authentication, when a user logs in, the server creates a session for that user and stores it on the server side. The server then sends a session ID, usually stored in a cookie, back to the client. For subsequent requests, the client sends the session ID with each request, allowing the server to identify the user's session and authenticate the user. Sessions are typically stored in server memory, but can also be stored in a database or external cache. Now let's start with the steps to make a session-based authentication. First we need to make our auth controller. Let's use the PHP artisan make controller to make a new controller and name it auth controller. Inside this controller we will write the logic for the register, login and logout function. Now let's go into our controller and start with the register function. Inside of it we will make a new instance of the user model and assign it the email and password. But for the password we will use the bcrypt helper, and inside of it we will put the request password. Using this helper we will hash the password for more security in our Laravel application. But we forgot to add the name, so we will go back and add the name equals request name, and that's it for our register function. Easy and simple. Next we will make our login function. It will take the request as a parameter and then inside of it we will make our login logic. I will paste this code and explain it so you can understand it better. In the first line we will make a new variable and call it credentials, and it will contain the email and password from the request. Next we are checking if the auth that the request came from is from the web file, and then attempting to login. The attempt method is a method in Laravel to make the login session and to log the user in. If the email and password are correct we just need to pass it the credentials, and then if it is true we will return a message you are logged in, and if not you are not logged in, and that's it for the login function. Now I know you didn't understand the guard method really well and it needs more explanation, so let's go to the config folder and the auth file to explain it. In Laravel, authentication guards define how users are authenticated for each request. When working with session-based authentication, you typically configure the web guard to handle user authentication. Here's a detailed explanation of configuring the authentication guard for session-based authentication. Laravel supports multiple authentication guards, each responsible for authenticating users in different contexts. The web guard is the default guard used for web-based authentication, including session-based authentication. Other guards, such as API, are used for token-based authentication, typically for APIs. The guards array in the configuration file defines the authentication guards available in your application. The web guard is typically configured to use the session driver for authentication. The driver option specifies the authentication driver to be used by the guard. In the case of session-based authentication, the driver is set to session. The provider option specifies the authentication provider that should be used to retrieve user information. The default provider is typically set to users, which corresponds to the users table in the database. Authentication process. When a user attempts to log in, Laravel's authentication system validates the user's credentials. If the credentials are valid, Laravel creates a session for the user and stores their authentication status. By configuring the authentication guard for session-based authentication in Laravel, you ensure that user authentication is handled securely and consistently throughout your application. And that's it for the auth guard. Now we need to test our application, but first we need to register our routes in the web file. Let's go to the web file and make a new route with the method post for login, and a route with the method post for register also, and then we need to make two get routes to take us to the login form and the register form. After making the routes, let's go to the auth controller and make two functions. One to return a view for the login form and the second to return a view for the register form. Now let's go and make two new views, the first one with the name login form, and the second is the register form. Inside of them we will just make a new form, one that takes us to the register route after submitting the data and the second to the login route. Now let's copy the form from the create view that we made previously and just edit the fields that we need and the action to login and to register. And now after we have finished setting up our views, let's run our application to test them. Let's write PHP artisan serve, and then go to the pages that we need. First we will register a new user, so we will go to the register form, but we have an error, wrong method. Let's go to the web file and we forgot to make the method of the form root get, so let's change it and then retry. And now we got the form that we want. Let's make a new user and press submit, and the user is registered and everything is working fine. Now let's go to the login form, and try to log in using the user that we just created, and let's press submit. And we got the message user is logged in and everything is working just like we want. That's it for today's video about session-based auth. In the next video we will learn how to make a token-based auth using different packages and ways. If you like this video and want to support the channel, check the Buy Me a Coffee link down below. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.